"Tony, you're here!" Linda exclaimed with joy as she greeted her husband in the hallway. "Perfect timing. Everything's ready. Go wash up and have a seat at the table. I've got your favorite cream of mushroom soup ready." She pecked him on the cheek. "You won't believe it, but I had to visit every stall at the farmer's market to find the right mushrooms," her voice echoed from the kitchen. Tony sighed, weary of Linda's constant rambling about her lucky finds at the market, like fresh beef or those hard-to-come-by heirloom tomatoes. It seemed to him that aside from cooking and groceries, nothing else captured her interest. It used to be about the kids, too, but their son had long escaped her smothering care, and their daughter had moved in with her boyfriend, only calling when she desperately needed money. "Well, are you just going to stand there?" Linda called from the hallway. "Your soup's served. Come eat before it gets cold." "Linda, I'm leaving," Tony said guiltily, avoiding her gaze. "What do you mean? You just got home. Did you forget something at the office?" "Linda, I'm leaving for good," he repeated, irritation in his voice. Linda looked at him bewildered. "Isn't it clear yet?" Tony opened the coat closet and pulled out a large suitcase they used for vacations. "Are you going on a business trip again?" Linda asked nervously, biting her lip. Tony sighed and said slowly, "I'm leaving you for another woman that I love." "And what about me?" Linda was in disbelief. "Tony, what about me?" she almost shouted. "Sometimes life just happens like this," Tony began packing. "A couple lives together, raises kids, and then," he paused, "one of them falls in love again to be happy." "Were you unhappy with me?" Linda bit her lip to stop the tears. "Linda, listen." Tony sat on the arm of the sofa. "I appreciate all the years we've been together. You're a devoted mother and a wonderful wife, but," he paused again, "I feel suffocated." Tony fiddled with his tie. "All you ever think about is how to keep everyone fed and the house in order. But when's the last time you asked about my feelings or about our kids? You don't even know what they dream of, what they care about. And me? I can't stand mushroom soup, but you decided it was my favorite because I complimented your cooking a few times. Maybe I prefer chicken noodle soup." "Oh," Linda realized, "I can make that right now." "Stop," Tony held her hand. "Don't make anything for me. Don't you see that a man needs more than just good food and a clean house? He needs an intelligent and beautiful partner to share life with, to talk and discuss things, someone he shares interests with." "Tony," Linda looked confused, "but we support the same baseball team, and I read the books you suggest. Do you even like baseball?" Tony scrutinized her. Linda looked away. "If you like it, then you must really like it," Tony stated firmly. "I prefer figure skating," Linda admitted. "Then why didn't you ask to watch that instead?" Tony erupted. "You seemed happy watching your game, and it's important to me that you're happy." "Linda, I'm exhausted," Tony sighed. "You never challenge me. Whatever I say goes. You don't argue or make a scene. Is that so bad?" Linda asked quietly. "My mother taught me to respect my husband and not to contradict him. Maybe that works for someone else," Tony continued packing. "But I'm tired of this stagnation. I need passion, excitement, love." "You have someone else," Linda suddenly realized, and Tony's silence confirmed it. "Tony, what about me?" she whispered. "What about our kids? What will our family and friends think?" "The kids are grown. They have their own lives. You just refuse to see it." Tony snapped the suitcase shut. "We don't have many friends or relatives. I think they'll understand." "But what about me?" Linda repeated anxiously, watching him. Tony stopped at the door. "You also have a chance to start over, just not with me." The front door slammed behind him, and Linda heard him descend the stairs quickly. She watched from the window as he got into a sleek car that swiftly drove away. Linda sat in the living room staring blankly at the scattered clothes. Normally, she'd tidy up immediately, but now she just looked away, pondering. Where did I go wrong? I was a good wife. The house was always tidy and warm. I cooked new recipes daily, though I barely had time for myself. She stood and faced the mirror, noticing her fuller figure, touched her face. My, the wrinkles, she mused, as if seeing herself anew. Then, touching her graying hair, and all this gray, why hadn't I noticed? She eyed herself from all angles. The bottom button of her robe was missing, and it was stained. I always told myself to wear an apron, she muttered. But who sees me at home? At work, of course, I dress properly. She opened the closet. Indeed, her clothes were all too similar. I never know what to buy for myself. I always shopped for the kids or tried to please Tony with a new shirt, and now he's showing off in those shirts to another woman. Linda went to the kitchen, saw the now cold soup, and dumped it into the sink, breaking the bowl. "And so my life has split in two," she murmured, shaking her head. "Now I'm absolutely unnecessary to anyone." She lay on the sofa, buried her head in the pillow, and cried silently until she fell asleep. Waking up to a bright ray of sunlight shining directly into her face, Linda stretched and initially didn't understand why she was on the sofa. But then, recalling the previous evening, she became sad again. It was time to get ready for work, but she felt utterly drained. "Maybe I should call in sick," she thought. But then, remembering the stern look of the chief accountant, Nancy Wilson, she quickly started dressing, glancing at the clock to make sure she could make it to work on time. "What happened to you?" whispered Sarah Johnson, Linda's friend, noticing her pale face. "We'll talk later," Linda brushed her off, noticing Nancy Wilson watching them. During the lunch break, Sarah nodded silently and quickly went back to typing, while Linda stared at the numbers, but her thoughts were far away. She still couldn't believe that Tony had really left her, meaning now her life had lost all purpose. Her children now lived their own lives and didn't even come to congratulate her on her birthday, just making do with formal phrases over the phone. Linda didn't notice how tears started streaming down her cheeks. She wiped them away with her hand and looked around frightened, relieved that no one seemed to notice. "Linda, are you coming to lunch?" she heard Sarah Johnson's voice. "I see you're so engrossed in your report that you're not even looking at the clock." "Of course I'm coming," Linda perked up, "just grabbing my purse." In the cafeteria, Linda and Sarah sat opposite each other, eating meatloaf and mashed potatoes, washing them down with iced tea in silence. "So what happened?" Sarah asked, pushing her empty plate away, noticing that Linda had no appetite today. "Tony left me." Linda's eyes filled with tears again. "Left? I don't understand." Sarah was confused at first. "He left you?" Linda lowered her head, her hands trembling. Sarah rummaged in her purse, pulled out some tissues, and handed them to her friend. "Wipe your tears, or people might think something." "What am I supposed to do?" Linda raised her tearful eyes. "I don't even want to go home now. Life has lost all meaning." "And did it have meaning before?" Sarah frowned. "The meaning of your life, or do you think that pleasing your Tony is your life's purpose?" "I wasn't just pleasing him," Linda replied. "I cared for him like any good wife." "So much care that you forgot about yourself?" Sarah asked sharply. "All your talks were about Tony, what you bought him, what you'll cook for dinner. Tony loves fish. Tony loves pancakes." She mimicked her friend. "Linda, what do you like?" Sarah looked her straight in the eye. "I'm not picky," Linda smiled sadly. "For me, it's most important that my husband and children are fed and clothed. Here you go again." Sarah slapped her hand on the table. "By the way, when was the last time you were on vacation?" Linda thought about it. "I don't remember. I didn't really need a vacation. Tony lately went on vacation alone, saying that wives and friends couldn't come, it turned out." Her eyes filled again. "That's it," Sarah said decisively. "Now you go to our madam," they nicknamed the chief accountant that way, "and demand she give you vacation starting tomorrow." "What? You're scared," Linda flailed her hands. "First, I'm afraid to go to her. Second, she definitely won't let me. And third, my report isn't ready yet." "How much time do you need to finish this silly report?" Sarah asked sternly. "Well," her friend hesitated, "about 1 day, or even less. If I stay a little late at work, I think I can manage." Linda frowned. Sarah stood up from the table. "So you're going to the chief accountant now and demand your vacation?" "I can't demand." Linda lowered her eyes. "Besides, I always enter her office on trembling legs. Good thing she rarely calls me in." "You'll manage." Sarah opened the door, and they both stepped outside. "Now, your new life begins where you must be brave and active. But why do I need a vacation all of a sudden?" Linda caught herself. "At work, at least, I can distract myself from sad thoughts." "And then," Sarah confidently replied, "so you can get yourself and your thoughts in order. You'll rearrange the furniture in the apartment, get rid of unnecessary things." Sarah specifically emphasized unnecessary things, clearly hinting at her husband's belongings. "You'll go to the hairdresser," and her friend paused mysteriously. "I know what will help you regain confidence in yourself and get rid of sadness and grief." "And what's that?" Linda became interested. "I'll tell you tonight. They already entered the office where the accounting department was located. Come on, write the vacation application and go get it signed by Nancy Wilson. Linda took a sheet of paper and began to write neatly. Please grant me my regular paid vacation. May I come in? Linda knocked and cautiously peeked into the chief accountant's office. Nancy Wilson was sitting at a massive table signing documents. What do you need? She asked sternly through her glasses, looking at Linda. I have this application, Linda blurted out. Nancy Wilson took off her glasses and placed them on the table. You want to quit? No, Linda replied frightenedly. I want a vacation. Where to? The chief accountant exclaimed. Linda, have you gone mad? What vacation during the reporting period? The report, I've almost done it, Linda said quietly. Just need to double-check some figures. But by the evening, everything will be ready. And why do you need a vacation so urgently? Nancy Wilson continued to look angrily at Linda. Your children are grown, or did you and your husband decide to go somewhere together on a last-minute deal? Linda's face crumpled and tears rolled down her cheeks. My husband left me yesterday, said he fell in love with another woman. Nancy Wilson's face suddenly softened. She approached Linda and, pointing to a chair, sat down next to her. I understand you so well, she said sadly. My husband left me several years ago. I know exactly how you feel. Linda looked at her boss. Don't be surprised, Nancy Wilson shook her head. Remember the movie The Rich Also Cry? I'm certainly not rich, but even people in leadership positions have their personal problems. And did your husband come back to you? Linda dared to ask. He came back, Nancy Wilson sighed. He apologized, said he made a big mistake, and I forgave him. But not completely. Now we live like two strangers, just maintaining the appearance of a family for others, especially for the kids and relatives. She sighed again. Essentially, I'm just as alone as before. She stood up and walked to the window. Linda sat silently, not expecting such candor from the chief accountant. I remember when my husband left me, Nancy Wilson continued. My life lost all meaning. I almost stopped sleeping and eating. Only thoughts of my children somewhat sustained me. After some time, I realized that my husband's departure wasn't all that bad. For one, I no longer had to spend all day in the kitchen preparing, as they say, an appetizer, an entrée and dessert. Secondly, I had more free time. I started reading more and even went on a cruise I had long dreamed of. So Linda, she turned to face her, I understand perfectly what you're feeling now, but believe me, this too shall pass, and you will definitely find happiness again. Nancy Wilson sat back down at her desk, put on her glasses, and signed Linda's vacation application. Submit this to the accounting department. Let them process and pay your vacation pay. I hope you won't let me down with the report. Thank you very much, Nancy, Linda rejoiced. I definitely won't let you down. Well, did the boss sign your application? Sarah asked. She signed, Linda nodded. Sorry, I need to finish the report, and don't wait for me after work tonight. I will likely have to stay a bit late. Okay, I'll call you in the evening when I get home, Sarah responded. Linda became sad again. She aimlessly wandered from room to room, not knowing what to do with herself. She didn't need to cook dinner, nor did she need to wash and iron her husband's shirts. Maybe the kids will come visit me, she thought, to keep from feeling so lonely. She dialed her son's number but only heard long beeps. Then she called her daughter. Hello? She heard her daughter Emily's annoyed voice. Mom, is it something urgent? I'm busy. Voices and music could be heard in the background. Sweetie, can you come visit me? Linda asked pleadingly. I'm very lonely right now. Can't Dad cheer you up? Emily asked irritably. Dad no longer lives here. He left me. Linda shared her sorrow. Where did he go? Emily was confused. Your dad has completely left me and said he won't come back. I wonder where our dad has gone. The daughter showed interest. Well, Linda hesitated. He left for another woman. He said he was bored with me. And he did the right thing, Emily replied unflappably. All you cared about besides the pots and the iron was nothing. Even when Jack and I lived with you, you only had the same questions. Did you eat? Did you do your homework? Did you put on a jacket? Mom, you never cared what we were passionate about, who we were friends with, or what we dreamed about. But daughter, I just wanted you to be dressed, shod, and most importantly, fed. Exactly, Mom. That's all you cared about, Emily answered sadly. Jack and I wanted you to hug us, praise us for our successes. And as a girl, I wanted to share my secrets with you, ask advice, or just sit in the kitchen and tell you which boy I was in love with. I tried to be a good mother, Linda cried. I didn't want to intrude into your souls, so you lacked my warmth. Mom, please don't be upset, Emily asked. But Dad didn't see much warmth from you either. Yes, you cared for him, but for a man it's important to see a woman in his wife, not just an attachment to the washing machine and kitchen stove. That's why he probably left, most likely for someone who knows her worth and how to use it. What am I supposed to do now? Linda cried even louder. I'm not used to living for myself. You have to learn everything in this life, the daughter philosophically noted. It's not too late for you to start over. And by the way, you are the most beautiful. You just need to reconsider your attitude toward yourself, change your hairstyle, buy a bright dress, and maybe even fall in love. Fall in love at my age? Linda laughed. That's impossible. I'm too old for that. If you really want it, anything is possible in this life. Mom, I'll come to you on the weekend and we'll talk about everything, okay? And don't worry about Dad. He'll definitely come back. I have no doubt about it. And when did you become so grown up and wise? Linda sobbed. You don't even need to see a psychologist. The daughter laughed and, after saying goodbye to her mother, ended the conversation. Just as Linda put the phone on the nightstand, it rang again after a minute. It was Sarah. How are you there? Sarah asked cautiously. I just spoke with her, Linda replied. For the first time in our lives, we talked like adults. Of course, I was a bit hurt by what she said about me, but maybe she's right in some ways. I just didn't notice a lot, trying to live for the family. Turns out my children needed not just delicious food and cleanliness in the apartment, but something more in terms of emotional communication. Probably something Tony didn't get. That's what drew him away. Finally, you're beginning to see clearly, her friend rejoiced. Emily has grown up very smart. You just didn't notice it, always thinking of her as a little girl. And you haven't let go of your son either. But Jack, by the way, has also grown up and did well to decide to live independently from you. In general, Linda, you have wonderful children, and you can be proud of them. And I am proud, Linda sobbed. I just need some time to understand that they've grown up, although I don't want to let them go from the maternal nest. Listen, I almost forgot, Sarah caught herself. On Saturday at 3, I'll pick you up, and we'll go somewhere. I won't tell you where we're going yet because you might not agree. I hope it's nothing criminal. Linda was frightened. Relax, nothing scary. I hope you'll like it. After arranging to meet on the weekend, Linda put the phone back on the nightstand and went to the kitchen. My goodness, so much has happened in the last few days, Linda thought as she adjusted a curtain on the window. Nancy Wilson turned out to be a kind person, and I had an honest conversation with my daughter and she invited me for the weekend. Tony left. Linda realized she was about to cry and quickly composed herself. Maybe I should look at the woman he left me for? She immediately scared herself with the thought. No, it doesn't matter. That morning, Linda woke up, glanced at the alarm clock, and quickly jumped out of bed. She was late. As she was putting on her shoes in the hallway, she slapped her forehead and laughed. I'm on vacation. How could I forget? Linda changed back into her casual clothes and wandered through the rooms, considering what she needed to do. She opened the wardrobe and saw that her husband hadn't taken all his clothes, leaving behind a dark blue suit, several shirts, and some personal items on a shelf. She stood looking at his clothes, unable to bring herself to remove them from the wardrobe. After thinking it over, Linda moved the hangers with his clothes further back and was surprised to find that her own wardrobe consisted only of one dressy dress she wore on every occasion, a few blouses, a couple of skirts, and a summer dress she was embarrassed to wear because of its deep neckline. After surveying the bedroom, Linda decided to rearrange it. Their marital bed consisted of two separate twin beds pushed together. She and her husband had slept on their own sides under different blankets. It was challenging, but she managed to move the beds to opposite sides of the room. Exhausted from the physical effort, she went to the kitchen to treat herself to a cup of coffee. Making a small grilled cheese sandwich, Linda sat at the table and suddenly realized that she had never eaten so calmly in the morning before. She used to wake up earlier than everyone else, quickly wash up, and rush to the kitchen to prepare breakfast. The kids ate and then left for school and later for college. Tony leisurely drank his morning coffee while browsing the newspapers before heading to work. Linda had to hurry to clear the table, wash the dishes, and rush to work. Sometimes she didn't manage to eat anything in the morning. She dined later than everyone else. The children and her husband sat at the table while Linda bustled about them, serving food on plates and pouring tea. Only when they dispersed to their rooms did Linda sit down at the table and quickly eat because she still needed to clean the kitchen, iron the laundry, and mop the floors. She went to bed late, trying not to disturb her husband who was already asleep. This routine continued day after day, year after year, and now here she was, sitting in the cozy kitchen, leisurely drinking coffee, and thinking about what else she could change in the apartment. Maybe I should change the curtains in the bedroom, she thought aloud. Tony never liked light curtains. He preferred the room to be dim, but I love when sunlight enters the room, making it feel warmer. After changing the curtains, Linda hung pictures on the walls that had long been stored in the closet because Tony didn't like anything on the walls. Now, standing in the middle of the room, she didn't recognize it. Finally, she had made the room exactly as she had always dreamed. In the former children's room, Linda didn't change anything, hoping that the kids would sometimes come to visit and stay overnight. In the large room, or as she called it, the living room, Linda also changed the curtains, put the floor lamp that she never liked, but which Tony used to read newspapers sitting in the armchair, into the closet. She tidied up the bookcase and replaced the huge rug on the floor with a small rug near the sofa. About the rug, Linda even tried to argue with Tony because it was her who had to clean it, which took a lot of effort, but her husband said that the rug gave the room a special coziness and he refused to get rid of it. After cleaning up in the bathroom, Linda lay down on the bed and immediately fell asleep, sleeping until morning without waking up once. In the morning, Sarah called her and reminded her that she would pick her up as they had agreed a few days ago. "Where are you taking me?" Linda asked anxiously. "You'll see," Sarah confidently led her friend down the street. "Here we are." Linda looked at the sign and bewilderedly at Sarah. "Eastern Dance Studio," she read. "Where have you brought me?" "Why did you stop?" Sarah pulled her friend by the hand. "Come on, they're waiting for us." "I'm not going anywhere," Linda resisted. "I'm not up for dancing right now." "Linda," Sarah said plaintively, "but I've already made arrangements. I can't let the person down. We'll just look, and if you don't like it, we'll leave right away." "Maybe we won't go at all." Linda tried to back away. "Come on, look at me. What kind of dancer am I?" She slapped her sides. "Let's go," Sarah said sternly. "It's awkward to be late." Following Sarah, Linda entered a large hall with mirrors on the walls. "Hello," a woman with long hair and a luxurious Eastern costume approached them. Her hips were wrapped in a scarf with coins that jingled with every movement. "My name is AmITheA. I am pleased to welcome you to our studio." Linda looked in awe at the Eastern beauty. "Please change into comfortable clothes and join our group." She pointed to women of various ages who eagerly awaited the start of the class. "So that's why you made me take sports pants and a t-shirt," Linda whispered to her friend, thinking they were going on a picnic. "I just feel awkward standing in such an outfit next to other women, dressed in light harem pants, skirts, and beautiful tops." "It's only for the first class," Sarah reassured her. "Later we'll pick the right clothes for you, even so costumes prettier than those dancers." "You think I'll come here again?" Linda was scared. "I think one class will be enough." "Girls, girls," AmITheA clapped her hands, ending the conversation. "We're starting our class. Newcomers can stand in the back row and repeat the movements we've already learned. So let's begin." Eastern music played and everyone started to follow AmITheA, smoothly moving their bodies. Linda was initially embarrassed, feeling as if everyone was watching only her. But then, seeing that the women were intently watching AmITheA, she relaxed and began to move her hips to the music. "So, did you like it?" Sarah asked as they walked outside. "I don't know," Linda shrugged uncertainly. "It's still unfamiliar to me. I hope you'll come here next Tuesday," Sarah asked cautiously. "It's hard to know from the first time whether it's for you or not." "And you used to do Eastern dances before," Linda asked her. "I noticed you were doing very well." "Yes, when the kids were younger, I would leave them with my mother and go to these dances," Sarah nodded. "I had problems with my husband. We were drifting apart, and someone suggested that Eastern dances increase attractiveness in the eyes of the opposite sex." "And did it help you?" Linda asked. "Why am I asking this? Your Pete literally blows dust off you and looks at you with adoring eyes." Only I don't understand why I need it. Tony has already left me. There's no one left to seduce. It's needed first and foremost for you, so that you can finally feel like a desirable, exciting woman, not just a superwoman who can stop a horse at a gallop and enter a burning hut. Will you go to these dances with me? Linda asked plaintively. I'm still a bit scared to go alone. With pleasure, Sarah replied. Lately, the couch has become my best friend. By Tuesday, Linda was more confident in her movements following AmITheA's instructions. After just the second lesson, her back straightened, her posture became prouder, her movements smoother, and a femininity emerged. She eagerly awaited the next class and was already looking for fabric in stores to sew herself a beautiful costume. When Linda returned to work, her colleagues didn't recognize her immediately. Linda, is that you? Asked Tamara, the payroll accountant, surprised. You've changed so much. Linda had indeed changed. She had visited a hairdresser where they dyed her hair and gave her a fashionable haircut. She bought herself new outfits, not the dull gray she usually wore, but brighter and more fashionable ones. The vacation did you good? Said Nancy, noticing the changes in Linda's appearance. You look prettier and even younger, so you can be proud of yourself. Thank you. Linda looked directly at her boss, no longer averting her eyes as she had done before. I realize that I can't give all of myself away to others, even if they are family. I need to keep something for myself. And what helped you reconsider your life in such a short time? The boss wondered, surprised. You won't believe it, but dancing. Linda saw Nancy's puzzled look. Not just any dancing, but Eastern dancing. At first, I thought I couldn't do it, but now I look forward to the classes and even sewed myself a blue costume, which turns out to match my eyes perfectly. Maybe I should try it too, Nancy asked uncertainly, her tone revealing a hint of her own longing for change. Lately, nothing makes me happy, and I find myself becoming a grumpy old lady, which you call Madam. But you are? Linda started to apologize. It's okay. Nancy waved her hand. I understand. Honestly, I'm not pleased with myself when I take my anger and dissatisfaction out on my employees. Linda enjoyed her dance classes where she made new friends, and often after class, she and her new friends would go to a nearby cafe where they would talk about their lives or simply share interesting news. Her life had become rich and exciting. Besides dancing, Linda attended theater performances, went to various exhibitions, and even signed up at a library. Why didn't I have time for this before, she wondered. There's so much interesting in the world, and I was just running in circles. Home, work, home, afraid to step out. Linda had blossomed. There was a sparkle in her eyes, and she noticed that men were paying attention to her. But she needed no one. She was enjoying what was happening in her life. Recently, her children, especially her daughter, began to visit her more often. Now, Linda and Emily often sat in the kitchen talking. Mom, you've changed so much, the girl marveled. Before, you just tried to feed me, barely asking about anything else. And now I can tell you about my problems, knowing you'll give me good advice. I'm even surprised at myself, Linda replied. I used to run around like a squirrel in a wheel, juggling the stove, the washing machine, and the iron, trying to get everything done, never even thinking that there could be a more interesting life. One day, returning home, Linda saw that the light was on in her apartment. Emily must have come, she thought happily, and hurried inside. Daughter, I'm home, she called as she entered the hallway. To her great surprise, her husband Tony came out of the room. Why are you returning so late? He asked sternly. I've been waiting for you for an hour. What are you doing here? She asked in return, ignoring his question. You've already taken your remaining things secretly when I wasn't home, thinking I would try to keep you. I didn't think anything, the husband grumbled. I just came to see how you're getting along. Wonderfully, Linda exclaimed. I finally started living. You never talked to me like this before. Tony didn't recognize the woman standing before him. You're the woman he had once fallen in love with. Is there someone else? He suddenly guessed. Were you on a date? Yes, Linda nodded. I found a me that I really like. Maybe you can feed me something? Tony asked as he walked to the kitchen. Honestly, I've missed your summer borscht. Sorry, Linda spread her hands. I've stopped being a cook and spending all day in the kitchen. I can only offer you tea and sandwiches. Well, at least make some sandwiches, he agreed. Linda put a cutting board and a knife on the table, took bread out of the bread box, took sausage and cheese from the fridge, and placed it all in front of Tony. "Cut it yourself. Meanwhile, I'll pour some water into the kettle." "What happened to you?" Tony asked, puzzled, pushing the products away. "You always took care of me, and I don't understand what's happening with you now." Linda turned to her husband. "Nothing unusual has happened to me. Before, you saw in me only the mother of your children, a cook and a maid, but you completely forgot that I am a woman. You didn't even give me flowers for many years, saying, 'Why waste money on them if they will just wilt anyway?' For my birthday or on Valentine's Day, you would present me with yet another pot or skillet. You liked my gifts, didn't you?" Tony lowered his eyes. "I said that not to hurt your feelings," Linda replied, pouring tea into cups. "By the way, if you're making sandwiches, make a couple for me. I'm hungry too." Tony mechanically took the knife and began to slice the bread. Then they drank tea, talked, recalling mutual friends in their youth, but not touching on their marital life. "You know, I now realize that we probably never talked this heartily." Tony stood by the front door. "We've lived together for many years but never had time to talk." Linda shrugged but said nothing to her husband. "Okay, I'll go." He clicked the lock. "Can I come again?" "Come," Linda simply answered. "Just call ahead, as I'm not always home during the day or in the evening." "Where are you then?" Tony began to ask, but then waved his hand. "After all, what right do I have to ask?" He lowered his head and quickly stepped out the door. Linda returned to the kitchen and approached the window. She saw her husband walking slowly across the yard, his shoulders slumped. She felt so sorry for him that she wanted to shout for him to come back, but she restrained herself. The past could not be returned. A few days later, as she was returning home, she saw Tony sitting on a bench near the entrance, with a beautiful bouquet of flowers lying next to him. "This is for you." Tony handed her the bouquet lovingly. "I hope you like it." "Thank you, they're beautiful," Linda said as she smelled the roses, their scent heavenly. "Maybe we can take a walk," Tony suggested. "The weather is wonderful." They walked down the alley and talked again. Linda shared that Emily might soon be getting married as her boyfriend was ready to propose, though she was still deciding whether to accept. Jack was also seeing someone and had promised to introduce her to his mother soon. "They don't even call me," Tony sighed. "When I call my son or daughter, they cite urgent matters and don't wish to continue communicating with me." "If you want, I can talk to them," Linda offered. "You are their father, after all." "No need." Tony shook his head. "I know I made a big mistake and I will deal with it myself." Linda didn't press further. They had returned to her apartment building. "I should go," she said, pulling out her keys. "Thank you for the flowers, I really appreciate it. Maybe next time we can go somewhere?" Tony asked quietly, perhaps to a movie or a restaurant. "We haven't been to a restaurant in ages." "I'll think about it," Linda said as she opened the door. "Goodbye, Tony." At home, Linda put the flowers in a vase and pondered. Could Tony really want to come back? On one hand, she was of course glad because they had spent many years together and raised their children. On the other hand, she no longer wanted to see herself in the role of the perfect wife, donning an apron and returning to the stove. Now she wanted to enjoy life, discover new things, travel. "Well, let's see how it goes," she thought philosophically. "Let him court me for a while." Indeed, the following weekend, Tony did invite Linda to a restaurant. After some thought, she accepted his invitation. Opening her wardrobe, she pondered what to wear. Her wardrobe now sported brighter clothes than she used to wear. As she sifted through the hangers, she suddenly spotted a gray-blue dress that a saleswoman had persuaded her to buy. "Just look at how well it fits you and how it matches your eyes," the saleswoman had chirped. "It will bring you happiness." Linda looked at the price and, sighing, hung the dress back on the hanger. Noticing this, the saleswoman hurried to cheer Linda up. "Today we have a 20% discount on all models, so this purchase will be even more advantageous for you." Linda picked up the dress again and carried it to the cash register. At home, she thought again, "Why did I even buy this? Well, if Emily agrees to marry her boyfriend, then I'll wear it to the wedding. For now, let it hang and wait for its moment." And apparently, that moment came much sooner than expected. They agreed to meet at the restaurant, and when she entered, he immediately recognized her, despite the recent changes. "You never cease to amaze me," he said admiringly, handing her flowers. "You look so good in that dress." "Now I will always look like this," Linda flirtatiously replied, accepting the bouquet. "Have you ordered yet?" No, Tony handed her the menu. I didn't know what you would want. After perusing the menu, Linda ordered a salad and a fish dish for herself. Tony also made his choice, ordering a bottle of wine in addition. The attentive waiter poured the wine into glasses. I want to toast to the beautiful woman who is sitting across from me, Tony said. You've always been a good housekeeper, caring wife and mother. Only I, unfortunately, appreciated it much later. But I think it's not all lost for us yet. What do you mean? Linda asked, surprised, but didn't get an answer because the waiter approached and placed their ordered dishes on the table. Do you remember how we met? Tony asked as he finished his salad. That encounter is still vivid in my memory. Tony, Linda furrowed her brow, not wanting to delve into memories. I think you didn't invite me here for that. Yes, you're right, Tony sighed. I wanted to talk about something completely different. He took another sip of wine. I understand that I'm very guilty before you, but I still hope that someday you'll forgive me. You only realize how much someone means to you when you lose them. I feel like I've lost something important in my life. Everything you did for me I took for granted and didn't appreciate. I wanted to add variety to my life so it would sparkle with bright colors, searching for something better without realizing that I already had it. I didn't pay attention to you, forgot to say words of love and gratitude, and even stopped giving you flowers. Tony nodded towards the bouquet on the table, thinking, why do you need them? You're already my wife. Linda looked at her husband, waiting for him to continue. These last few months I've lived alone and missed you terribly, missed our son and daughter, the home comfort, everything I so easily destroyed. It pained Linda to see her husband now so lonely and lost. I want to come home. Tony looked into his wife's eyes. I promise it will never happen again. He paused, waiting for her response. I had a feeling you would return, she calmly replied. That's why I wasn't in a hurry with the divorce. But understand, Tony, the Linda you knew doesn't exist anymore. You noticed yourself that I've changed. If you return, no one will take care of you like before. I have new interests, hobbies, and I don't want to be just a housewife anymore. So, if you really want to come back, you'll have to accept me as I am now. Think about whether you really want this or not. Tony, I agree to everything. He covered her hand with his. I will try to earn your forgiveness and regain your trust. It's up to you, she shrugged. But you'll live in another room, in the former children's room, and we'll see how things go from there. The next day when Linda returned home, she saw a suitcase and bags in the hallway. From the kitchen, delicious smells wafted. Tony, you're home. Tony emerged from the kitchen, wiping his hands on an apron. Sit down, dinner's ready. It didn't turn out as tasty as when you cook, but I think you'll like it. Linda looked at her husband and smiled. Sometimes you need to lose everything you have to gain everything you dreamed of.